Definitely. There's always tricks to the trade, right? That the older guys bringing us up.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, teach us.
Then we become the older guy too. Don't
Yeah.
forget, John.
That's the truth, isn't it? Then
Hey.
we become the older guys
Hence-
passing down the word.
Hence the glasses, right? We're both wearing glasses. John doesn't have his right now.
LASIK.
You are now listening to On the Beat Podcast.
And welcome to episode number 6 of On the Beat Podcast with Lou Maroto and myself, John Riddle.
Yes, sir.
Morning, Lou.
Good morning, John. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am excited because we have a great guest today.
Okay. So what I want to do is I'm just going to push this to you, okay, for your introductions. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, SYMPATICO, out of West Palm Beach. They're a real estate company out of West Palm Beach for all your real estate needs. Palm Beach Personal Protection Group for any type of executive protection work or firearms training for concealed weapons, and Riddle Defense for your hand-to-hand combat, self-defense, and beginner, intermediate, and advanced firearms training.
Boom.
All right, boom.
Let's do it. All right, guys. So, like we said, today we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine from New York, the Big Apple, which is where I was raised and born. Very proud. But our guest today has been in law enforcement. He's retired now, but he worked over 31 years as a NYPD officer / detective. During that time, he's worked over 700. I mean, this number is like phenomenal. 700 homicide cases solving. Imagine this, solving approximately 575 of those cases.
Wow.
I mean, that's talking about passion for your job and making sure you catch the bad guy. And he has a little nickname, the Master of the Box. And we'll explain that here in a little bit of what it means to the box. Hopefully, anyone that's listening is not in the box or soon to be in the box.
Yeah.
But without further ado, I want to introduce my friend, retired New York City police detective, first grade homicide detective, Rick Tirelli from New York. Rick,
Right.
Thank you for being here with us today.
Welcome, Rick.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, guys.
You know, it's I know you have a really busy schedule, and we'll make this as painless as possible.
No, I'm looking forward to it, Lou. It's
But
an honor.
we want to hear what a homicide detective. How did you get to that point from being a beat cop in New York City, which is one of the busiest cities in the world, to you making it to detective first grade, and then ultimately tell us about because John and I have talked about life after police work, and you have planned for life after police work way in advance before your retirement. And that's what we want our viewers or the people that are listening to be aware of. That don't wait to the last minute. But let's without that,
Yeah.
you want to add something?
Yeah, because in talking to guys, and as Rick is probably you well know, from up in the Northeast, cops retire and they think, I'm going to retire and I'm going to go south to the beach or I'm going to go down to the Jersey Shore or wherever, and I'm going to just hang out there. And that's what the rest of my life is going to be, drinking pina coladas and hanging out on the beach. And I think we both understand, being retired police officers, that there's more to it than that. In
There's a hell of a lot more. There's a hell of a lot more than that.
in reality of life, there's a lot more to it than that, right? So, and I always tell people, if that's what you think you're going to do, give it a year. Try it for a
You'll
year
see.
and see where you wind up.
Well, I think everyone during the COVID times, I think we're all feeling that pain right now because of limited things that we're able to do, limiting just people in general, being able to do what I do what I do now for a living. But I just wanted to, start out first of all, just to thank you guys for allowing me to be on the show. It's an honor, and Lou and I go back a long way. through a very dear friend of ours, John Scolo, who is a
Yes,
West
sir.
Palm police officer. And I went on the job in 1984. I wanted to be a cop my whole life and always wanted to be a detective. My dad was in law enforcement. He was a Nassau County detective. Nassau is one of the suburban areas out here. He made detective, and that was always my goal, to do what my dad did. My brother Danny is still on the job, went on the job in 1983. As many of you know, Pat Lynch is one of the most famous legends in law enforcement union business. And Danny's in the top 5 on the union board. He's the longest running person on the union board. He's in his 27th year as a union official, his 38th year in the New York City Police Department. So we have a family of law enforcement, my brother and I, my dad, and that's what I always wanted to do. And, you know, something that Lou had mentioned before, relative to the fact that, you know, cases I worked on and solved, like anything else, it's a team.
Absolutely.
Police work's a team. It's a collective team. No one does it themselves. Those numbers sound inflated in a sense. And the reason that they sound inflated is because, like, people look at, like, all those numbers. Back in the 80s when crack was king, there were shootings every night. There were shootings every night. I don't have to tell you guys. Yeah. And there was a lot of homicides, as you know. So everything I did was collectively with a team. Absolutely. I didn't do it myself. You know, everything that I got in this police department, I earned, and I did earn a lot. I earned it with a team of fellas and ladies and gentlemen behind me, pushing me as I pushed them, you know, because nothing feels better than when you bring a case to justice and give a family some closure when they lose a loved one.
Yeah, especially that way. I know I came on in 85, 86 down here in South Florida, and it was with the crack cocaine coming into South Florida and a lot of things that we were starting to develop here also. It was crazy. I mean, there were shootings every day and every night and homicides. Yeah, I get it. You know, so and we're just a mid-sized city here compared to New York City. So I can just imagine. Right. You know, you're working one case, and then the next day you got probably half a dozen more cases on your desk that are coming in that you and your
non-fatal shootings. And we, in the homicide squad, we handled non-fatal and fatal shootings. So, as you know, a shooting could become a fatal shooting at any time. So everything had to be handled, you know, from, you know, the inception, and make sure that, you know, you have all your ducks in a row and make sure you collect all the evidence that you need and interviews. And today it's become a little easier with video and cameras and phones and everything else that we have, you know, availed to us today, and a lot of resources that we didn't have back in the 80s, as you know. Yes. To make our job a little easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Rick, where when you first got hired, when you first went on a job in New York, what beat or what section were you assigned to? Like, what was your
first came on the job? I went to the 114 precinct in Astoria, Queens. My brother Danny happened to be there a year before I was. And you know what? Again, it's the people you surround yourself with, and I have to say that because it's, as Lou knows, I met Lou through John Scolo, as I had said, right. And I played a lot of softball, and made a lot of friends throughout the country playing softball, and that's a team concept right there. And policing's the same way. And when I went on the job, I hooked up with a guy, Donnie Herr, who had 15 years on the job. Well, I knew nothing. I came out, I'm a Long Island kid, you know, what did I know, you know? And Donnie took me under his wing. And, you know, I'll give a quick story. We get a call for a robbery in progress on Steinway Street at a jewelry store. I'm ready to run. I'm my pedal to the metal. I'm ready to run there. Donnie's like, where are you going? And the callback came back that the callback came from the owner of the store. Donnie goes, if that call's coming back to you and the callback's the owner, then the perps aren't there anymore. What's the best way for them to flee? Would they go Northern Boulevard, or would they come up towards Astoria Boulevard and jump on the BQE? I'm like, I don't know. He goes, well, you pick one. I go, all right, let's take BQE. I don't know. Guess what? Here they come. Now all the other units get there. What do? Give over the plate, the description of the guys. So instead of us running this, you know, there aimlessly, like everyone else was, every other rookie would do, I stayed back, we hung back, and guess who we got? We got the guy with the jewelry, make the jewelry store case, lock him up with the guns and everything else. I look like a hero. Meanwhile, I would have been there doing nothing like everyone, not like everyone else. I don't mean that, but I would have ran like a chicken with no head. But you learn from the people that you work with, and that was a big learning factor for me.
Yeah, definitely. There's always tricks to the trade, right? That the older guys bringing us up.
Oh, without a doubt.
Teach us.
Then we become the older guy too. Don't
Yeah.
forget, John.
That's the truth, isn't it? Then
Hey.
we become the older guys
Hence-
passing down the word.
Hence the glasses, right? We're both wearing glasses. John doesn't have his right now.
LASIK.
So you went from the 114. How many other precincts did you?
I started in 114. I was pretty lucky. In a year, they took me out of and put me in plain clothes and anti-crime.
Okay.
And in 2.5 years doing anti-crime, we had what they called a RIP unit. It was a robbery enhancement team that all robberies were getting enhanced so that you could further find other perps, get statements, patterns, you work patterns and so forth. And in 2.5 years, I got brought into the robbery squad. And that was also in the 114. I left there in 1988, and I went to the 105 squad in Queens Village. I was there for a year and got promoted to detective, and I got moved to the 102 in Richmond Hill, Queens, again. And during my time there, I had some successful cases that my partners and I had solved. And I got picked up by the homicide squad by a guy who was a legend in our job, Phil Panzarella. They called him Sundance. This guy was, oh my God. The guy used to carry 3 guns, knives in his boot. I mean, he was the old Sundance, Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid. He was that guy, But he was a legend, and that was after Eddie Byrne had gotten assassinated up here in New York City.
I remember that.
And they strengthened up the narcotics units at that time because it was just running rampant with the crack. And Philly picked me up and brought me into the homicide squad. And I remember I was a young kid, and it was like beginning of the year, and all the old time guys had 20, 25 years. I had 7 years, 6 years, 7.5 years, whatever, 6.5 years.
Yeah.
And they handed me the vacation pics, and they said, "Here, kid, here's your vacation pic." Oh yeah, that's right. By the way, you already had your vacation. 'Cause it was January, and everyone else ate up all the vacation anyway. So, but I went to the homicide squad, and that's where I learned everything that I learned because of the veterans. I watched, I listened, watch how they operated, and I learned from the best, I believe, in the world, New York City detectives.
And I was a detective 3rd grade. Is that what?
I was a 3rd grade detective. Detectives, there's 3 grades in our job. 3rd grade is the entry, or the first level. Then there's 2nd grade, and then there's 1st grade detective. I retired as a 1st grade detective out of the Manhattan South Homicide Squad, which I tell everyone I had the best front row seat to the best show on earth. We covered all of Lower Manhattan, from river to river, up to 59th Street. We had, Lower East Side and all the Times Square, and we just had the best place I ever worked in my life right there in Manhattan. And the people there were amazing, amazing detectives. And anything that happens in Manhattan in that particular area, it's always in the news. So they all become high-profile cases. A lot of them become high-profile cases.
Do they become high-profile cases, Rick, because of the media, or is it because of who it is?
Probably both, because there is a lot of media, as we know, in New York.
Right.
And if it's a prevalent, important person, not that anyone's not important. I don't mean it like that. Believe me. But there is a lot of money in some of those areas, and the cases become high profile just because who's involved, which adds a lot of pressure to the police, as you guys know yourselves. Sure. Now you're getting pressure from the mayor's office or from other political people that are up on the case, and they want you to solve it as quickly as possible. So it became a great team effort.
Rick, let me just backtrack a little bit. You spoke about you were big into playing softball and you traveled a lot. So I would imagine it was like a travel league, right? Correct?
Yeah, we traveled once a month all over the country.
How did you get started with that?
Well, I always played baseball when I was a kid. I was a ball player, and I had my kids kind of young, so I was playing locally. And a couple of the police teams had asked me if I wanted to play, but I just couldn't because I had young children at the time. So 1996, I said, you know what? Now it's my time. I'm going to start traveling a little bit with the team. And then I started my own team because at the time I was very fortunate. Again, the people you know and the people you surround yourself with. While I was in the Queens Homicide Squad, one of my partners was Bill Clark. Bill Clark got called to be the to be the technical advisor of one of the best TV shows, I think, ever on TV, NYPD Blue. So Bill, at the time, was a detective, first grade detective in the Homicide Squad with me in Queens. Bill was going back and forth to LA, doing the stories and doing everything. And midway through the first season, they bumped him up to an executive producer spot, which is unheard of. That's how important he was to that show. So Bill used to get all the stories here in New York. He knows I know a lot of people. I was on the union board too. I was a Queens trustee for the Detectives Endowment Association in 1996. And I worked my way up to be the third highest guy. I was the secretary of the union through 2008. And during that time, I knew a lot of people, and Bill knew that, and I was active. So they kind of anointed me to get the stories for them here in New York. So I used to interview detectives from all over the city, get their cases, their best cases, and then I would send them out to Bill and the writers, and they'd spend a weekend out there with the writers and Bill and for NYPD Blue. That's how I got started in TV, the TV world.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Now, did you compete? I remember Bacon Ball.
Yes.
Right? You guys came down here, what, every year?
When John Scolo started that Bacon Ball stuff, we would come down every year. April, he would have his tournament.
That's a charity. It was a charity, right?
You know, I have friends all over the world, like, you know, cop friends. And I've never had better friends than I did down in Florida. I mean, Lou and John and Jeff Devlin, who's currently a police chief in Hollywood Police Department out by
Great
you.
guy.
Mikey Suarez and, you know, all the guys. They're just great guys. They became my second family. And every year we would do trips up here between Lou and Johnny, and it'd usually be around Christmas time. John and I have December birthdays, and John got engaged up here, and I took him down to the tree at the time, and Lou was up here, and I won't tell you about Lou's little adventure that weekend. I guess he'll save that for another day.
That's another podcast, I'm sure.
Oh, Lord.
But so we traditionally used to do that, and we still do it, you know. And we had friends from the West Coast, Del Pickney, God bless him, who was one of the best guys ever. He was a Tustin police officer. And he and this guy, Jeff Blair, started what they call police softball. And what it did is it encompassed about 100 teams across the country. And they started the World Series of softball. Initially, it was in Palm Beach. Not Palm Beach, I'm sorry, in Palm Beach. No, Palm Beach is you. Palm Springs, I'm sorry, Palm Springs. And then they moved it to Vegas. And we played in October every year, police softball World Series. And during the course of the year, all teams would vie to get, you know, top billing at that particular venue. We had all the West Coast teams, all the East Coast teams, and everyone collided, you know, for the bragging rights of who the best team in the country is.
It was definitely a great weekend.
I'll tell you, the camaraderie in softball, it's so, listen, you get between the lines, everyone wants to beat everyone, no doubt. But when we step off that field, we know we're all cops. And I played civilian ball, a lot of civilian ball as well, for many years. And when I got into the police softball, I can't believe the monsters that are around this country, monster ball athletes that never made it because it's just so hard to make it in police, in the professional field, you know. But there's guys across this country that played professional ball, guys that were on my team, played professional ball, got drafted, but never made it. And going across the country, you see so many, oh my goodness, the best people you'll ever meet in your life. Cops, to me, there's nothing like cops, you know, and I that's why my first TV show I did on my own was called Watching the Detectives. And basically it was a transition from the NYPD Blue days. I said, hey, what do? I go around and get stories for NYPD Blue. Let's do our own thing. So we started in New York. We did 13 episodes. and basically there was 4 or 5 different stories told within the hour. And cops, no one tells stories better than cops. Come on,
Sure.
cops love their stories,
Absolutely.
and everyone loves to hear them.
Yeah.
And if you watch TV, what do you see out there? Cop shows are all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's how I started to transition into the TV world. And I retired about 5.5 years ago. And during that time, I did a 2-year show called I Married a Mobster, my partner, Kevin Kaufman. Then we transitioned from there, and we did a show called The Perfect Murder on Investigation ID as well. And we did 5 seasons of that together. And it was very successful. It was one of the top shows on their network. And they, right before COVID, we didn't get picked up. And we started pitching other shows, as you do in our field. And at that time, we're still pitching, and then COVID came along and knocked us, like everyone else, out of the box. So, but I was fortunate, like I said, again, who you're around. I did a movie called Pride and Glory, and we were talking before, especially yourself, in the field that you're in. And I worked with a guy, Gavin O'Connor, who's amazing. He did Warrior. You might have seen that movie too. And I got that through Frank Grillo, who's one of my dear friends. Frankie, as you know, does that show Kingdom.
Sure.
And John and I discussed that before. And I did the movie Pride and Glory, which was such an honor. I worked with Colin Farrell, and Edward Norton, John Voight, Frankie Grillo, Shea Wiggum, and a host of great actors. And through that, then I got some stuff with Keanu Reeves. I did a movie with Keanu, who's probably the nicest man I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, the guy is incredible. And then Kevin and I said, you know what, let's do our own movie. So we did a movie. It was based on a case that I had worked on where a girl, Kimberly Anthonakis, one of the cases I had worked on, was kidnapped and burned alive. And we couldn't go to that extent, but we tried to make it a little bit more about my daughter, Olivia, who's now 16. At the time, she was like 10 or 11. And we made her be like the protagonist, or the person that solves the case, in a sense. Tried to go after the younger crowd, the younger generation. And we did a movie called Ace the Case. And that was in 2017. No, I'm sorry, 2013 or 14. So we've had some success in the industry, but right now everything's closed down because of the challenging times.
Sure. Yeah. So with the slowdown there with the shows, what are you doing now?
Well, currently I'm pitching stuff. I had a couple of things. I just did a couple of episodes for Oxygen Network. I did that show Snapped on a couple of cases I worked.
Uh-huh.
So I do that. I do some consulting, do some PI work. I used to have a security business. I have a pretty good security business. I did all the security for Time Warner Cable and Cablevision back in the day. And I also did what was that? Oh God, thinking of one of these electronic stores. What the hell was it called? And they just had a
Crazy Eddie.
No, yeah, Crazy Eddie. But I did that, and and then I do a lot of, like, people call me up to do stuff now currently, matrimonial stuff. As a matter of fact, Rocco from Rocco's Tacos just called me. One of his friends had a little something. I did something for him. So I'll pick up odds and ends jobs for people and do stuff like that. Actually have a meeting this week with on Wednesday, I believe, with ID, Netflix, and a couple other places that we're pitching some shows and ideas that we're trying to put out there.
That's great. That's great. Going back to your career, I have to ask you, being the investigator you were with homicides, what would be and if you could talk about it, the one that sticks out in your head the most, whether it be somebody who is well known, or how this took place, the method. What would be the craziest one you've handled?
I think the craziest one was the one I had touched on before, which was Kimberly Anthonakis. She was a young girl. Her dad was such a special guy to her, and she was a special girl to him, as his only child.
I remember
she did
that
a friend a favor, and she allowed them to stay in their house while their floors were being redone. During that time, the girlfriend of her, the boyfriend, stayed, and their child as well. They weren't married, but they had a baby in common. And he took advantage of knowing the father's generosity, knowing that she was a party girl a little bit. So he got two buddies. She comes home on a particular night that she used to go out, to like one of the clubs. They waited up the block and they kidnapped her, threw her in the back of a car. And then they put her in a house that they knew they had, and they put out a ransom for the father to get the daughter back. During this time, we don't know who he is. And we just assume he's a friend because he was living in the house and he's watching every move we're making. Meanwhile, he does a call to the father for the ransom. And the dad had one of those answer machines back in the day when you used to say, hello. And then you say, hey, Rick, how you doing? Whatever. But, gotcha type thing.
Yeah.
So he never got the full request or ransom. Make a long story short, they started to panic. A few days later, they left this poor girl in a basement in March. It was a damp time of the year, rainy, no heat, no electric. It was a house that was adjacent to one of the other perps. They knew it was vacant. They knew they could get in. They left her in there for 3 or 4 days, never fed her, nothing. Now everything went, ass backwards for them. He knows that we're on to a lot of different things and he's monitoring us because we think he's helping us, handing out flyers, doing everything else. So he went there, doused her with gasoline, lit her up, lit the house up, and burned her alive. And we ended up solving that one. They wrote a book about it, Burned Alive, actually. My partner, Louis Pierre, and Tom Shevlin, and myself, and a collective group of others that helped us so much. And that always will stick in my mind. That one, and probably one of the last cases I worked on, a partner of mine, Bob Hahn, who's amazing, still on the job in the Manhattan South Homicide Squad. We had this young kid. His mom and dad were, doing drugs, doing the thing they weren't supposed to be doing. The mother couldn't have the kid anymore. The father gets the kid. He really didn't have time for him. And he meets a tranny that he allegedly didn't know was a tranny. He's going back to work. And he asks her, or him, whatever you want to refer them to, can you watch my child? It's right around Christmas time. Brings the kid there. Miles Dobson, the boy's name was. He was 4 years old. I mean, such a sad thing. She takes the kid. The father gets locked up on a warrant. This happens on in December around Christmas time, as I said. So she has him for like 2 or 3 weeks. She don't want him. He's, not what she didn't sign up for that, Make a long story short, she starts abusing this poor child terribly. Not feeding. He wasn't eating properly. She burned him with George Foreman's grill. Like with the grills itself, beat him, knocked his tooth out of his mouth, put him out on a veranda of where she had lived in a very, very exclusive area in Manhattan, Upper Manhattan. Left the kid out there, sub-0 degrees. Ultimately, the kid ends up dying from all the beatings he took and the abuse and hypothermia from that. And I'll tell you, talking to him, her, whatever you want to, consider them, and trying to keep a composure. And that's where Lou came into the part where they used to say it was the master in the box. As many of you know, there's, you could become a detective. And when you become a detective, you work your cases and so forth. But there's a lot more to being a detective after you put the guy in jail or a girl in jail. You got to be able to articulate what you did, how you got there. Statements, as we all know today, are very important in a lot of cases. In that case, we really didn't have anything without the statement. And my partner and I were in what we call the box, the interview room, for over 12 hours, and we finally got everything. Identified how the injuries were sustained and how the injuries were to the child and how long the child was there. And as you know, you watch TV. A lot of people watch TV. They're probably watching this right now. It's a knack. You got to get into someone's brain, and I had a good knack for that. And other guys and other girls were better at certain things than I was. And, we all had our job. And collectively, that's what makes detectives work and police works so good, because as a team, we always go to everyone's strengths. And in New York City, we have so many, as you know, at the time, we probably have right now, probably 5,500 detectives active. It's more than departments have collectively. So through 5,500 detectives, you got a lot of good people out there. And we solved many good cases out there. Many good cases.
Hey, Rick, a quick question. At what point during your career as a detective or law enforcement or a police officer, did you decide to start thinking about the future? You know, what am I going to do after this portion of this chapter of my life is over? What am I going to do?
Well, during the time that I was on the job, as you know, I had that security business. I was working the Time Warner Cable and doing all that stuff. Oh, Circuit City stores I was doing too. I had about 10 Circuit City stores. I did all that security. And so I was starting to do it then. And I never, ever thought it would take off the way it took off with the TV stuff. And again, I could attribute that, and I thank Bill Clark for that, who's currently, he was the NYPD Blue czar. He was the guy. And so I started thinking about it then, and I was trying to juggle a lot of things, as we do as cops. You know, you get your overtime, you're working your cases, you're trying to work a side job and do everything you could do, because, you know, we don't make millions of dollars out there, you know. So I was always trying to monopolize my friendships with people, and I know a lot of people outside the job as well. And I started early, and I didn't really want to retire. I had 31 years on the job, and my partner, Kevin Kaufman, had come to me and said, listen, we're starting season 3 with this. I can't do it no more. I need you here more. And to be quite honest with you, when I did the thing with Keanu Reeves, a lot of people got very jealous of what I was doing. And I did my own movie at the time, like I said, Ace the Case. And a lot of people became jealous, and they were like, you know, I had to really get out of the job because it was taken away. People were, you know, jealous, and you know how jealousy becomes in the police departments. So I said to them, all right, I'll retire. So after 31 years in the police department, I went. And we had a three-year run with that show. And we're hopefully going to get something else soon, you know. It's the biggest thing that we do in our shows, we empathize with the victim. And as we know as cops, with all that's going on in policing today, people don't realize, and I don't want to get too political, but, you know, the Black Lives Matter, all this matter, we all matter. And, you know, I can tell you right now, I didn't judge someone by the skin tone or what they were. Listen, if someone got killed, like Miles Dobson, who was a young African-American, I took it as serious for him as I do for anyone else. And I think there's a bad, you know, thing going on with cops today, and people looking at us like we're always doing wrong. If they only knew when we're in that locker room getting dressed or wherever we are going out on our day, no one's going out there putting that badge on and strapping that gun to them, saying, I'm going to go shoot someone today. Correct. That's the last thing we want in law enforcement. Yeah, and true. I'm a great example of that. I was involved with thousands of arrests, from burglary to robbery to murder to petty larceny. And thank God I never shot anyone. And if you took the amount of arrests made by New York City police officers and how many times guns are involved where they shoot a perp, it is so minute, it's incredible.
Sure, yeah. People don't realize that. You know, they only see, again, going back to the media, what the media wants to put out, you know.
Exactly.
And it's you're absolutely right. You look at how many times arrests are made, you know, and dealing what we deal with versus the times that the trigger's pulled. It's very minute. And people have to get educated on that. You know, they really do.
Well, the part that scares me more, and John, you're the best person to talk about this. What you do, you teach people to self-defense. And let's be honest, if you're going to tell cops they can't do certain things now, what's your course of action? If I can't take you down and bring you down, and you know, listen, I'm not saying you choke someone and hold them down. You know, listen, we all know there's good and bad in every field.
Absolutely.
Wall Street, doctor, real estate, whatever you do. But if you took the amount of police officers and over in the world, and you took that percentage, I bet you it's less than any other job.
Sure.
You know, but we're just under the microscope because we're held at a higher authority. And that I understand that. And I took pride in that.
Hey, Rick, I was telling John, kind of changing the topic a little bit. When we first met, when we went to New York,
right?
And remember, it was me, Scolo, and I think BG, a mutual friend of ours. So Rick had arranged a a spot for us to stay at. Remember that? Over Times Square.
I do.
So
Well, what happened? These guys were coming here. And you know, cops, we want everything for free.
no, come on, man.
Who knows who? Who knows this guy? Can you have who knows a good guy with a meal? Who knows a guy with a hotel? Whatever. So we knew a guy that was like, he loved cops. He said, I'll help them out with the room. I'll give it to him at a really good rate. And we get there. Now, you have to realize Scolo, Scolo is 6'3", 250, you know. Then there was BG, who was like 6'5", close to 300. And then there's me and Tattoo Lou over here, you know. When they were walking down the hallway, they're like, are you kidding me? We can't stay here. It's too small. I don't care if we have to pay. So we end up at the W Hotel. How weird is that? We go to the W Hotel, and Scolo monopolizes that place. He was the gift of gab, Scolo.
The gift of gab.
He was called him my little brother. But Johnny ended up, monopolizing this place, becomes best buddies with the guy at the desk, and we got a good rate there as well. And then collectively, every year they come into town, we would stay at the W Hotel on 14th Street, Union Square. Yep.
You know, and another thing I wanted to bring up was I had the opportunity to go to one of your precinct down. What was the name?
My precinct. At the time, I was assigned to the homicide squad in Manhattan South.
Okay.
And I worked out of the 13th precinct, which was adjacent to the old academy on 20th Street. This is on 21st Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. And I took John and Lou, and I took Dell and Ryan Coe there as well. They couldn't believe this is where we worked and the facilities we had. I mean, John, when I tell you, we used to do a 4 and 2 chart as detectives. So we would work a 4 to 1, our first one, go home. Second one, a 4 to 1, and stay over because the next day you had to be back on deck 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And with all the busy times we had, I lived on Long Island. A lot of people didn't want to travel. By the time you get home, now you get off at 1, you get to bed. Now it's 3, you're back on the road by 5. So you're better off staying in the precinct. We had what we called the dorm. These dorms were pathetic. I mean, so I showed them the dorms. They were like, "Are you kidding me? This is where you stay?" And I basically lived there. I mean, think about it. You working around the clock, doing crazy times. We slept in these facilities that were.
Well, you guys had a long travel though, back and forth, like you said, to home. Unlike down here, it's pretty close. But yeah, I can imagine. It's like a basement.
Yeah, pretty close.
It was a dungeon.
Yeah,
it was a dungeon.
Dark.
I mean, it was terrible. Mice and rats running all around outside and inside. And, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, that's just not what we normally used to,
Now, I did tell John though, you had 2 lockers, I believe, and in those 2 lockers, and as detectives, you guys always look impressive, professional. The suits and you almost look like mobsters, and that's what I thought you were when I walked through that airport, and you were standing there like something was going down, and you were like the door guy, But you had a lot of suits.
Back in the day when I was in Queens, dear friend of mine, one of my best friends growing up, I played ball with. His father owned Rico's Clothing out in Center Riches, Long Island.
Rico's
Clothing. And I got all my suits there. So they used to call me Slick Rick. And I used to send everyone out to Rico's to get their clothes. And, when I went to Manhattan South, I mean, they were the best dressed detectives I've ever seen in my life. And I have friends of mine who worked in Brooklyn North. Brooklyn North guys, I used to tease them. Dear friend of mine, Georgie Farback. And he and I were on the board together. He was in Brooklyn North Homicide when I was in the Homicide Squad in Queens and also in Manhattan South. And it's funny, like the difference in clientele or whatever you want to talk about, and where he was and where we were. So these guys always tie tight, everything else, Brooklyn North, the tie isn't tied, whatever. Here we are wearing custom suits with our initials on them and pinky rings. And those guys are just getting out of bed, running around because they're so busy. Yeah. So what we used to do is tease them. Every year we'd have a Christmas party. Now, Lou knows I had a couple of restaurants in the city that treated us like
Oh, my
we were
God.
the king. One of them was called Barolo, and it had a garden there. And our bartender, what was his name again?
Oh, hey, I almost said it. I almost said it.
Anyway, he
Anyway,
used to feed us drinks like forget about it. So every year we'd have our Christmas party at one of these real elegant restaurants. And I used to tease the Brooklyn North guys and send them pictures of like Church's Chicken and Kennedy's Chicken place to say, how's your dinner going? And I'd send them our beautiful linen napkins and tablecloths and silverware. And I send them pictures of like, you get like, that knife and fork and a little thing. And,
Yeah,
hey
those
guys, and
plastic.
say, listen, who breaks balls better than cops? No one breaks balls better
sure.
than cops, right? So it was a good running joke. It was great.
what was the name of that restaurant that we went to where there was no windows? You remember? We went with I think
No
Robbie the
windows?
jeweler. Went to Robbie the jeweler. Remember he took us to a
Robbie,
restaurant.
we went.
There was like
Did
no
we
windows.
Go to, Did we go to Don Pep's? It's the
It was like a
known
big,
Don Pep's in Queens. I think that's where we went. Robbie
there
the
was
jeweler.
few windows that were very high. So if anybody threw something through a window like a bullet, it wouldn't hit you. You remember now? Went with Robbie the jeweler.
Oh, Trey. I think that was Trey Dici.
Yes.
That was on 26th Street in Manhattan.
It was weird. I mean, the food was delicious, but
Oh my God!
Some
There's some
good
great
times.
spots. Great spots.
Rick, I want to ask you a question. I know you're a busy guy, and we're getting short on time a little bit. But what advice would you give a young person that's going into the job, as far as how to handle themselves, he or she, how to start looking forward towards the future, or making your bones, getting promoted, working your way up the ladder, kind of like you did, and then the life after. What advice would you give somebody?
Well, it's pretty funny. My brother Danny, who I told you is on the job 38 years. His son, my nephew Andrew, just went on the job. He's in the 114, and it's pretty funny because Andrew came on the job. He's just went there. He's the least seniority person in the 114. The most seniority person in the 114 is my brother Danny. It's kind of weird. So you got the whole spectrum there, the top and the lowest. But
lowest on the totem pole.
today, as both of you know, and Lou, you're still on the job has changed drastically, and we're under the microscope. I think a big thing today, you really need training's important, and that's got to come from the departments themselves. They got to train cops, train us, train these young kids. I think a guy like John should be someone that they should go to, because you want to use the least resistance. You want to use people like John that can teach you how to defend yourself. There's a lot of kids, a lot of people, boys and girls, men and women that go on the police department. And I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I was an athlete. I played sports. I boxed as a kid. I did everything. There's people that go on a job. They might have that 4-year degree, but they never got punched in the mouth.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah.
being honest
Yeah.
with you. They never got punched in the mouth. They never punched someone. They never got kicked in the ass.
Mhm.
So what happens is they panic.
Yeah. They get
And
the experience on the street.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
you get a guy like yourself that's trained and trains people to do these things. This is where you need the training to come in to be very effective to these young cops.
Absolutely.
Listen, the thing that scares me most, with my nephew especially, is he's an athlete. He's a good kid. He's a strong kid. He's in great shape. I don't want someone not to have his back. And you need everyone to be on the same page today. And with all the scrutiny and everything going on, you don't want them to hesitate also. And when they know they need to be aggressive and maybe not take that aggressive role, because now they're saying, oh shit, excuse me, but oh my God, like, should I not? What should I do? And that's when you get hurt.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's when you get hurt.
And
so
it's
my
what we're
advice,
seeing a lot of today.
Yeah, my advice to people today is that when you go in as a team. If you need backup, call for backup. That's why we have the resources we have. Now, a guy like yourselves, like Lou, you're as well trained as anyone in policing, with guns and everything else that you do for what you do on, with your business. guys and girls need to get that training like that. They know, they need to know that, you got to watch one another's back. When the time is to use the force, when not to use the force. And in bigger police departments like us, like, LA and so forth, sometimes you don't have the time to teach these kids, but they got to make the time. They got to make the time to teach these kids what they got to do out there. But my biggest advice to everyone is to just always use the resources that you have out there. Don't be a hero. Step back. If you don't have it, call emergency service or what we call emergency service. You can't get in a place, step back. Call for a supervisor. Make the supervisor. That's what they get paid for. Let them make those decisions. Don't you make those decisions. And the biggest thing I think that you need to do is stay focused and watch your six. Watch your partner six. And that's the biggest thing. But I think that in policing, there's so many opportunities for all of us. I was very fortunate. And the bottom line is that surround yourself with good people. Be honest. Go out there knowing in your heart that you're going out there to do the best job you could do every day. And that's the best advice I could give anyone.
Yep. Then you,
Awesome.
you go home, you can sleep better at night, and you get up the next morning and you do it again. Right?
Great advice, brother.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely.
You have any?
I'm good. Very interesting.
Well, you know what, Rick, thank you very much for being with us. Like I said, I know you have another meeting planned right after this, for taking the time to spend with us. I'm still waiting for my royalty check for that one scene I did with you.
You got it, Sony.
I'm still waiting for my 50 cents
Yeah.
to
Rudy
come
told
in.
me about his little part there that he didn't.
Yeah, minus taxes is
Did
like
good,
12
though.
cents.
Yeah.
You did good. It's funny that, you said, like, I have something else to go to. I love doing these things. I'll tell you why it's an honor to me. Because if people like us can spread the word, and people that aren't us, cops and whatever, and they tune into things like this, they see the sincerity of what we are. We're good people.
Yeah.
We're good people. If they could only just know, we have families just like everyone else.
We're
I don't
human.
want my son or daughter or anyone to get hurt either. I have children. I have 4 children. Lou, you got 2 boys. John, I'm sure you have children as well. And the bottom line is that if we could teach even the communities out there and let them see what we face every day. Listen, we have split decisions to make on a dime. It's not Monday morning quarterback. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback to say, I would have done this. Yeah, you think you would have done that? Let me put you in a room where you hear gunshots and you get called to a scene and you're getting there. And on the way there, you're told there's a man in a room with a gun holding a woman hostage and already shot someone else in that room. Okay, you tell me anyone that's not going to that job with an adrenaline pumping like you can't imagine, envisioning everything that could go wrong. And now you get in that spot and here comes a gun pointed at you from a dark room and you got to make that split decision. Let me tell you something, brother. It ain't easy.
Yeah.
No. Nope.
Yep.
I think we both were there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
John and I were, I think I told you in the beginning, John was a SWAT team leader. Then he went to, he became a SWAT team sniper, but he's a sergeant of the sniper team. And, he's done it just like, when I started, John was, I think he was sniper team leader.
Yeah, I got on, when I first got on, I was with the sniper team a couple of years, and I got off and I went on to the entry team. I did 13 years on the entry team, and then I did my last 3 years as a sniper team sergeant.
No. But like you say, we've both gone through that door at one point or another as number one or whatever, and you don't know what's on the other side, and you got to make a split decision.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, when emergency service used to come to us, and we were in New York City, we had the biggest gang in the world. I mean, we had 25, 30,000 cops, When emergency service got there, I let them do their work, man. Those guys, like yourselves, you guys are trained to do what you do there. Listen, as a young cop, you get in there, why? Don't go busting in. Right. Step back. Don't be a hero. You don't need to be a hero. Yeah. And let them be the hero, because that's what they do best.
Absolutely.
Like you guys did. That's what you do. You're trained to do that. Take a step back. Don't always go jumping into everything. Look at what the situation and use the resources you have out there, and that'll keep people safe.
That's the
on
key
both
word.
ends.
That's the key word that you keep using. It's resources. You
Yeah.
know, and we teach our officers that, use the resources that are out there, that are present, and don't throw yourself into the fire.
Right.
Exactly.
But again, Rick, I think we appreciate the time that you took
Yeah,
to
definitely.
to be here with
Thank
us
you. Thank you.
this morning.
Hey, if
and
you ever need
thank
me
you for
again, I'd
all
love
your
to do it. It's an
information.
honor.
I'm sure our viewers are gonna love hearing your stories, and how you made it up the ladder and life after police work. So
There is life after the police.
absolutely,
There is.
Absolutely.
There is.
So hopefully I see you in September, though. I'll be down there the 14th. I'll call you.
hey,
I'd love
hold
to
on.
meet John as well.
Hey, before
Yeah,
you
definitely.
before you leave, I want to just a reminder. I bought 2
I'm a
shirts.
solo shirt.
Yeah, remember this one,
I certainly do.
right? I always keep the shirts. I can't throw them away like
It's
that.
funny. I'm wearing one of my guys right here. Tommy Wheel passed away last year. I think you met him. Great detective, union guy, one of the best guys. He got a heart attack and passed away. And yep,
Was that the latest?
John, man.
That was the latest one, right?
Yeah, yep.
But
All right.
all right, Rick. Thank you
Always
very much.
thank you.
You
Thank
have a great day.
Rick, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. It was great meeting you, and I hope to meet you in person, face to face.
I bought a place down there, so I'll be down there. I'll call you guys.
Sounds good.
Drinks on,
Thanks, gentlemen.
drinks on
Have a
Rick.
great day.
Thank you.
Take care, bro.
Take care.
Bye.
Later, bro. Hey, you want a drink? Cool.
Yeah.
FS.
I'm
Cool
watching my
FS.
figure. I'm watching my figure.
Later, boys.
Bye,
Take
bye,
care.
Rick.